Hello and welcome to a brand new COYFCast series, My 13. It's really quite simple. These shows are going to sit separately from our usual episodes. We're just going to delve into our favourite and best players to have ever donned the black and amber, according to our guests, of which we're hoping to have many, many, many over the coming weeks, months, even years. Who knows? Now, of course, with a new idea like this, we need to test drive it. So we're going first, and it would be a bit weird if we hosted this series without actually giving our 13s as well. I think you'll agree. I'm Ross Williams, your host, as I'm sure many of you are aware. I'll be giving my 13 on the second episode of this series, so do follow or subscribe wherever you may be listening to this, potentially on YouTube. This is actually the first one on our COYFCast YouTube channel, so go over there and subscribe. But we're going to kick off with my esteemed co-host, Adam Hughes, who's with us now. Adam, excited to be the guest for once? Excited to be the guinea pig?
Yes, I feel like I'm back on episode 2 being the guest.
It's got that vibe, hasn't it?
Yeah. Come and pick your team and tell us, open up for everybody to judge.
It is pretty much the same thing.
Pretty much, isn't it?
It should be fun, but I think it should be fun. There's no hard ground rules to this series. We're not going to lay any down, I don't think. I think we want to keep it pretty fresh. So whoever show it is can pretty much decide how they want to build the team. I mean, I was kind of throwing ideas around in my head today. If we get an historian on who knows everything about the 1935 team, why not? I'd like to hear about that. We want to keep it fresh, but I believe we are keeping things simple, at least for mine and Adam's. And I'm pretty sure your team's going to be who you've seen live, who you've seen in the flesh, right?
Yeah, so I've basically based it on players I've seen sort of since I started watching CAS, which for anybody wondering, I started sort of midway through 2004 with my first real full season being a CAS fan, following them home and away, was that 2005 season in the second division.
Yeah. Cool. And obviously kind of works for this first episode and well, probably the second one as well, because obviously I'm similar-ish within kind of a year or two, and obviously similar kind of age and similar time watching cast. So hopefully, I'm sure we'll be able to share quite a few stories around these players in the next half an hour, 45 minutes or so. So let's get going. Going. Obviously, my 13 starts with number 1, starts with the fullback position. Who are you going for?
Yeah, a couple of interesting choices. I'm sure we've had a bit of a mixed bag at fullback over that period of time. I would be surprised if anybody wouldn't have this guy in their top 2, at least. And I've gone for Luke Dawn.
Luke Dawn
for
gets
Dorney,
which is, I think it'd be a popular pick.
Yeah, definitely a popular one, I think. He's obviously had 2 little stints at CAS. I'm going for mainly his 2014 to 2016 stint. Overall, I believe I've had a look at a few stats. So 85 appearances for CAS over those 2 stints, which is probably, I didn't know whether that was more or less than I thought he'd made. I think
it's
it
a
might
bit
be
less, to be honest.
I seem to remember him playing a lot of games for some reason, so it's a bit of an interesting one. But yeah, he's a guy that has a very distinct voice. I always remember having worked down at CAS. The moment we knew that the guys were done training was when we heard Donny's voice booming through the stadium, and normally followed by Luke Gale's Basil Brush laugh. An interesting one. But yeah, Donny, a guy that me and you actually worked his leaving party all those years back.
Remind me.
I believe he was there.
Was that? Maybe.
I might have forgotten
that
one. I'm sure it was you. Might be
moons
forgetting
ago.
that one. But yeah, I had the joy of kind of working that and getting Donny's pat on the back and saying thank you for everything. Sort of that night was pretty special, and he's a pretty sound guy to kind of be around off the field. Obviously, we've not really talked about his on-field skills yet. Obviously, a great support player in his day. I remember, I believe, a hat-trick he scored at Headingley. I remember the Magic Weekend try where he pointed at the camera, and that's quite an iconic picture that sticks out in my mind. I believe it was in the white shirt that was kind of the tiger print.
Yeah.
I
I
remember the
quite,
kind of
there was
tiger
yeah,
face.
we had a few like mad Magic Weekend
Few
shirts
magic,
in a
few
row, didn't
interesting
we?
ones. But that's the one I remember. It's kind of an iconic picture. I remember using that quite a lot. Um, but yeah, number one, Luke Dawn.
Yeah. I mean, I think, like I said, I think it'll be a popular picker. I think obviously we're going to have a range of kind of ages as well on this podcast in terms of guests. So I'm sure obviously there's names back in the day. I mean,
Yeah,
Graham Stedman, for example, there's tons of great fullbacks who played for Cast. But I think certainly of kind of our generation, as you say, I think he's probably one of two or three,
yeah.
maybe.
He's a standout one
Um,
for sure.
yeah, definitely the last kind of 20, 25 years, obviously. Great Super League rep generally.
Yeah,
Is he still Super League's all-time leading try scorer of an Australian? Won't be
believe
far off.
so.
He was right the way up there, wasn't he, in terms of the overseas scorers? As you say, a couple of stints. Regardless of a really nice bloke, as you say, it's not
Yeah,
just within the game. I think he's really well
real
rated
good
as a
form.
bloke, and I think a big part of this series as well. As much as stats are stats, and they're great and everything, but I think moments is a big thing and what you really remember these players for. As you mentioned, the Magic one, there's two for me with Dorney, to be honest.
I've
There's two.
forgotten Wigan.
Yeah, I
Oh,
mean,
have I
that's one of,
forgotten Wigan?
I mean, look, I know non-cast fans hate it, but that was Sweet Caroline, wasn't it? I
Yeah,
mean, he
that was it.
literally he scored the Sweet Caroline try against Wigan at home in 2014. And for that alone, I mean, he's in folklore forever. That was an unbelievable moment. And do you know what my favourite Luke Dawn moment is? It's not even that one.
Go on.
It's not even that one. It's the fact he was the player who got headbutted by Sinfield.
Yeah. That's always a great memory. I've got my
Yeah,
head
the fact that
just for everybody listening. I've got my head in my hands at the fact I've forgotten Wigan. That
the first one,
try
we've got some
against
nerves
Wigan.
on this new series. It's fine. But no, yeah, an
Ah,
amazing moment, obviously, in the Wigan game. But yeah, I mean, for me, the Sinfield thing was huge. I mean, the fact that
it's a good.
Sinfield quite clearly called him a cast something. And I know
Mm,
there's kids who listen, so I'm not going to say what he said,
mm,
but that was beautiful. Just
yeah,
for Sinfield to be saying that to an Australian who's like so regarded at cast that he's calling him a cast something was
yeah.
absolutely beautiful. And seeing Sinfield see his matching orders after that. But yeah, Dorney, a great player, fantastic, a really good attacking fullback. Yeah,
Incredibly
he wasn't the
attacking.
perfect fullback by any
No,
means, I don't think, but certainly going forward, knew his way to the line, and yeah, iconic moments. I think Dawn's a very strong pick. The very first pick of my 13 on the COYFCast at number one. Let's talk wingers then. Let's talk number two. So your first of your wingers.
yeah, it's a very interesting one. I believe we've had some very prolific wingers, especially over the last sort of 10 years.
Some very
Obviously,
good left edges generally, I
yeah,
suppose.
especially in that Darryl Powell era. I feel like anybody who
Yeah,
were put out on that left edge generally got over the try line.
yeah.
And I'll probably annoy some people with my picks,
What's the beauty of it?
especially with who's at number two. I've gone for a very polarizing player in Denny Solomona.
Did he not retire too early?
Incredibly early. I believe he retired at like 22 from
Very early retirement.
rugby league.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah. Sell it. I mean, you don't have to sell it. It's your team, but sell it to us.
44 appearances, 60 tries.
That's pretty mind blowing, isn't
We
it?
talk about strike rates, and there's a player obviously that we talk about strike rates, but Denny Solomona beats him. And obviously, the Denny's obviously mad with how he left Cass. That's
Yeah.
the big negative around it all, and obviously, it's an awful thing, kind of what he did.
Yeah.
Ended up getting the payout at the end of the day. Does he sit there now as still only a 30-year-old out
Is
of
he only
rugby?
30?
He's only 30.
Wow.
I think he's out of rugby completely now. Don't think he's playing rugby union. I know he went back over to New Zealand and played sort of the back end of the year down in New Zealand. I haven't seen him sign anywhere else or anything kind of come up. I know there was rumours about him a couple of years ago potentially going to St Helens,
Hmm.
coming back to rugby league, which that'd have opened up another can of worms, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But for pure just try scoring ability, I don't think I've seen anybody better. Never mind in a Cass shirt. I don't think I've seen anybody better in Super League.
He's as like a proper athlete winger, as a proper in terms of physicality, in terms of what he
Yeah.
could do, in terms of finishing, in terms of speed. I agree, he's up there. He's right the way up there. He was phenomenal that year, wasn't he? When he scored all those
Yeah.
tries, he broke the Super League record off. I know.
Yeah.
I think Greg might have re-broke it afterwards,
Mm.
but Denny broke the original try scoring record. And for a cast player to be doing that is just remarkable, isn't it? And it was again when we talk about moments. I remember Denny scored for London against us
Yeah.
as we pretty much knew he'd signed,
Yeah.
and he scored. He might have scored a couple when
It
they
were.
played him in their final games, and we're chanting at him from the Weldon Road, and you can just see his shoulders going.
He's
You
loving it.
can see his shoulders going. He's loving it, and yeah, he was a bit of a character. Clearly, a bit of a character.
Very
But
character.
in terms of like you say, a relatively short sample size of
Yeah.
44 games, but Jesus, he made the most of it, didn't he?
If he'd have gone on to play for another sort of 4 or 5 years at Cass, we're talking about him being a modern legend. I'd
Oh
say
yeah, yeah.
easily. He's scoring tries for fun. That 2017 season, if he plays on that left edge in that team,
Yeah.
taking nothing away from what Greg did in that season, absolutely not. He did great, but then he scores for fun. And
Yeah.
you think that 2016 season, he did it without Michael Shenton.
Is that where he got injured? Week one.
Shenny got injured week 1. Thank you, John Pedebza. Blew his knee out, and that were him done for the season. And I mean, there'll be no surprise. I'm not ruining any surprise. We'll come on to Shenny later on.
Yeah.
Him, if Dennis Solomona plays outside Shenton all season, how many could he have scored?
Yeah. No, it's a fair point.
Yeah.
I can't even remember who fully was with respect to who may have played centre that year. Was it
Webbo.
Was it Webber on his left centre? Okay.
Webbo moved to left centre, I believe.
Who played on the right then? I'm trying to think. It's not even that long ago. I'm really not too sure. Was Minikin in there at that time? I'm not sure.
No, I believe the year after.
But either way, yeah, as you say, the fact he didn't have necessarily a quote unquote. This is not to say Jake Webster never passed. It's not the case, but to have a less of a passing centre inside it and to score the amount of tries he did, he's pretty remarkable. And yeah, a lot of it just his pure physicality. So as you say, won't be the most popular pick. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's your team. And I mean, as a Cast fan that year, Denny was incredible, and I completely understand. And I think if you were even a kid, probably a little bit younger than us at that time, if you were 10 years old going to Cast games that year, I mean, I could tell you your favourite player was.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I'd have been Dennis Solomona. So, yeah, I completely understand that pick. Yep. Hold the thought on the other winger. We're going to go straight to centres. We're going to do it numerically. So let's go to number 3. And I believe you've almost certainly just mentioned him.
We have just mentioned him. Jake Webster, straight in there. Get the big hunk in there. One of the nicest blokes I've ever met in rugby league. Had time for everybody. Especially media, loved a bit of media, doing some Q&A sessions with the players. But over in his time at Cass from 2013 to 2018, 124 appearances for Webbo. Big, strong, powerful. Definitely the centre that we needed at the time when he joined us.
Yeah.
Perfect complement to Shenny on the other side. So I think it just speaks for himself, and I think I struggle to think of any other better options.
I think, yeah, certainly in the kind of the 20-year period where we're talking about, if that's where the rules are, like I said, I'm sure there's options in the 80s and 90s for 100%. Definite. It's just we haven't seen them. And this is the beautiful thing about this podcast. There'll be people in the cars going to work now and those kinds of screaming at the radio, going, you should have said,
yeah,
well, we're going to get you all on. We're going to get you all on, so you can say them when you come on. But yeah, in terms of the period we've seen, Webbo, as you say, perfectly just what we needed. That he had that real grunt about him. Had a bit of pace as well when he came over, and he had some real strike. And obviously, former Kiwi, he had all the reputation in the world.
Physicality, just great. I know towards the end of his time with Cass, his body started to let him down. Maybe
it was a classic example of the last 6-7 years where he was probably one of those who stayed a little bit too long, sadly. But yeah, I mean, if you remember him at his peak, I mean, this is the fellow who scored 4 tries, I believe, the day we lifted the league leader shield. Again, you talk about moments Jake Webster were a big part of that massive period of Castleford rugby history, isn't he? So completely understand why Webber was in there. So your other centre then, and no prizes for guessing who this is going to be, I assume.
Oh, it goes without saying. I think this one straight in there, number 4, easy. Probably one of the easiest picks of this 13, Michael Shannon. Talking about a guy that's played 300 games for Cass, 120 tries, top try scorer in Cass's history in the Super League. Leader on and off the field, clear to see, made everybody around him better. Goes without saying that Shenny arguably could have been, I don't think he was, but arguably could have been first name on this team sheet. I think he won number 2, to be fair.
Yeah,
But
I think as we just said, he's centre wise in terms of the last 20-25 years. Yeah, he's got to be number 1, isn't he? He's not. It's not. It's not particularly close, is it? I mean,
no.
there was again there was this thing. There was a feeling you felt along like the more cynical part of the fan base for a certain extent, like, oh, Shinny doesn't pass. What?
Shenny passes when he knows someone's going to score.
There was an element that he held onto the ball in some
Right.
regard, but it was genuinely the right decision. Yeah, he used to get pretty tight at the sideline as well. I
Yeah.
felt like at the centre was because, like I say, you don't score 120 tries without doing that, I suppose, do you?
He's someone that just had the right knack of passing at the right time, being able to put his winger away, and you know it's going to be a try, especially with some of the wingers that he's played with. I mean, a standout try assist is that behind the back flick pirouette thing he did at Magic against
Magic
Leeds.
weekend. Yeah.
I,
Was it Hitchcock who scored? Was it Jai?
I believe that was Greg.
Was it Greg? No,
I believe it was.
I remember that. That's the mark of it, though, isn't it? I mean, the fact is, I know what try you mean. I remember the pass more than
Yeah.
who even scored it.
Yeah.
So it was just an amazing bit of skill and an unbelievable player, as you say, unbelievable player.
You talk about it. His feet were unbelievable. He had a knack of taking the ball right to line, and his late feet were unbelievable. Being able to step and move at least 2 people over, really causing problems coming out the backfield. Defensively, often making up for a couple of players that were maybe poor in defence. I mean, you look at some of the wingers, they're not being talented defensively, but Shenny's decision making in that instance and in those situations almost makes up for it.
I think defensively as well, it's a mark of a player what your kind of opposition says about you.
Yeah.
There's a few players probably on this list that I imagine who had various kind of reviews from other teams, from the coaching staff, from the players. I think that was a mark of like press conferences and stuff like that around that time. They'd all call out Shenny's defense and how difficult it was to break down on that side because of how strong tactically and also physically Shenny were to get by. That's why he got England caps. That's why. Let's be honest. With respect to us as a club, it's why Saints got him. It's why Saints. How often do Saints poach players from Cass?
Exactly.
It's very, very rare, isn't it? Let's be fair. He was a top player and deserved. Unfortunately, didn't win a grand final, but played in the grand final, scored in a grand final as well. And as I've said in the podcast before, he featured in my dissertation, which is probably the low light of his career, but probably shows the mark of the bloke that he didn't really know who I was, but was willing to give me kind of half an hour of his time to chat about whatever.
You had a half an hour conversation with Shenny.
Yeah, it was good.
I've got a lot of good things to say about him, but an half an hour conversation with Shenny might send me to sleep.
Might say more about you than me, mate.
His voice, I mean, his voice, especially in interviews, a little bit monotone and a little bit boring.
Yeah, but a good bloke. A nice bloke.
Great bloke.
That's all that really matters.
Wound me up for 4.5, 5 years. So definitely a good bloke.
Yeah, tremendous player, tremendous centre. And although we're not naming captains of a team, probably someone who'd be at least a big consideration of a captain in this team as well.
Would be my captain in this team.
There we go.
Easily.
Other winger, number 5.
Justin Carney. That absolute monstrous.
The tank on the flank.
The tank on the flank. How can I not have the tank on the flank on the wing? Another guy that is games to tries ratio, 62 appearances, 63 tries.
Jesus, I didn't realize it was that good.
Now you talk about this, and I know the first cries of people is going to be, you've not got Green in the team. Unfortunately, one of these three people had to miss out.
Yeah, it's a
You
fair,
look
that's
at,
a fair point. It's a fair call, isn't it? It's a fair honourable mention, whichever one misses out, isn't it?
and I could even potentially think about Kirk Dixon as such a
Great play.
great player to potentially put on the wing.
Gonna need a goal kicker as well.
Exactly. I've got a couple of decent goal kickers. Don't you worry, they're
No.
coming up. But yeah, Justin Carney's got the nod in the 5 shirt for me. I think just the unbelievable destructiveness that we got to enjoy. I mean, he was only playing between 2013 and 2015 before certain things happened.
Yeah,
And obviously he moved on to Salford. But I remember him absolutely ragdolling Sam Tompkins.
yeah. That's
And I
what I've got
think
in mind.
that stands out. And it's just as much as you've got to rate Sam Tompkins as a player, he gets under your skin as both, I'm sure, a player and as a fan. But seeing him being ragdolled, quite a nice thing, especially around that time when he were at sort of peak annoyance.
It was at his pomp, wasn't he? He was like probably, yeah, like a Man of Steel contender every year,
Yeah.
like a tremendous player, but yeah,
Team
peak
Justin.
rat bag.
Yeah.
it was it was rough. It was rough to play against that time, and I've never seen. I mean, Carney was just. Again, I think he'd make quite a lot of teams. Just we're talking about favorite players, not that's
Yeah.
the thing. It's his favorite
That's
players, not
yeah.
necessarily best. It's favorite players, and it's just I've never seen a player like him. That's the best thing I can say about Justin Carney. I've
No.
never seen a bloke like him on rugby field. I mean, his quads were like
Oof.
tree trunks, and he didn't step.
No.
he didn't need to. He didn't
Samoan
need to.
sidestep.
Yeah, as Sam Tompkins found out, as you correctly say. But knew his way to the line, and just a remarkable kind of character as well. He's
Yeah.
kind of upbringing and everything
Yeah.
in
The story
Australia.
the story behind Justin Khan is if you've never heard it, go look it up.
He's essentially a cowboy, isn't he?
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is like a genuine real life cowboy. Yeah, I mean, we won't talk about too much what happened at the end, but prior to that, it was an unbelievable
Yeah.
player. I'm sure he'll make plenty of these teams. Certainly, kind of that our kind of generation. I think Carney would be knocking around a fair few of these.
Mm.
Speaking of a player, and I mean, I'm going to go to number 6 now. And if we are doing this in the last 20, 25 years, I don't know how anyone could not pick one particular person. So
No.
we can wax lyrical about him for 5 minutes if you want.
So it's the first of my Man of Steel winners during this time,
Yes. Yeah.
of which in this team there is 3.
Okay.
And,
Spoiler.
and
Okay.
unfortunately, 2 of those players were in the same position, so one of them had to miss out.
Yeah, that's going to be a debate for a lot of people,
Yeah.
isn't it? I think.
Yeah. So this is my first Man of Steel player. Rangy Chase, goes without saying. I mean, the unbelievable talent, especially during that first stint between 2009 and 2013. Just, I think it made every fan watching around that time fall in love with
Yeah.
Cass and just the sheer brilliance that he had. The unbelievable tricks, skills, just talent that he's got. I mean, take away his off-field issues, and Jesus, he could have been the best player in arguably Super League history, potentially,
I think if we're talking about talent, yeah.
talent-wise.
I mean,
Touch, un, un, unreached potential, I think, is sort of a word to describe Rangy because he had all the skills in the world. Just
he's the epitome of that kind of flawed genius
yes,
idea, isn't he? He's like, I mean,
oh,
there's a lot of footballers have it, don't they? They always
yeah,
have, and he's that kind of character. I mean, yeah, in terms of plot, I mean, it was the point where, especially if you're a kid growing up around here, and again, like say between that 2009, 2013 time, obviously it was just 2011 he won the Man of Steel,
yeah.
right? Um, it was a point where you almost you weren't going down the lane on a Sunday to watch Cass, you were going down to watch
What's
Rangy.
Rangy?
You really
Everybody,
were.
every kid in every park playing rugby wanted to be Rangy Chase. Everybody were doing the flicks,
Yeah.
trying to be Rangy Chase.
The first, I think it was against Catalans, the first time he put it around the back
We went down
and
the
the
sideline.
centre went, what? It was just unbelievable. I think were walking around the ground for some reason. I think we were just trying to get back to his place, been to the toilet or something. He did it down the railway end, and it happened in front of me. I was like, "What did he just do?"
Because it confused so many people. Because there's very few people that were able to do it. Everybody could potentially do it in training, just as a bit of a joke, but nobody had the skill to do it in a game, and nobody had the absolute balls to do it in a
That's
game.
the thing, yeah. It's that ripping up the. You never see it nowadays because of like analytics and there's percentage plays and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, there's no there was no percentages to what he did. He would just they kind of play what you see. I guess was the ultimate thing. I had this chat with someone the other day about Ranky as well. Am I right in saying he kicked directly from a 20-meter restart once? And if you bounce,
More than once.
yeah, if you get, again, probably showing my age, I was quite young when he was kind of at his pomp, but because a lot of people don't realize that is a rule where if you can kick the ball out with a bounce from the 20, you get the ball back, don't you? I don't know if it might just be a tap now, but it was a scrum, I think, at the time.
I've seen very few people do it before that, and I've seen very few people do it since.
Because it's a percentage play, isn't it? It's a very low percentage play because you've got to nail your kick, otherwise you're just giving the ball back after a 20-meter restart, particularly now because it's a 7-tackle set.
Yeah.
So your coach is going to kill you if you don't nail it, and they're probably still going to kill you if you do because it's such a mad play. But yeah, I'd never seen someone do that before. I didn't even know it was a rule before Rangi did it down the line.
I remember teams putting wingers back, watching for it, which is just crazy.
Amazing.
But yeah, I think that just shows the kind of player that Rangi was, always thinking outside the box, kind of trying to just push every little inch that he could. Absolute terror as a bloke off the field, in and around the place. Absolute joke merchant. Terrorized me to hell. If anybody were around his Instagram around the time that he came back to Cass, I'm the guy that has the same jeans on, apparently.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Forgot that one, didn't you? Always used to come in and say same jeans, cuz I was like, yeah, Rangi, nice to see you too. I mean, I remember having a serious conversation to him, and I slowly saw that his phone was coming up out of his hand. And I'm like, put the camera away. Trying to have a serious conversation about something. But yeah, definitely always was a great bloke to sort of see and great to have around the place.
And I think just a massive part of the Cass story in the last 15, 20 years, isn't he? It'd be a different club without him, I think. Because obviously in those dark times in 2010, 2011, where the club was, or 2012 as well, where the club was in a really bad way, he was there. You forget he was there and managed to play the way through it, and obviously got to 2013. And the fact he moved on, maybe it was money related. Who knows what really happened? But just a huge part of the Cass story, and the favourite player, I'm sure. I think anyone under the age of probably 35, really, are probably looking at Rangi Chasers. You talk about number one picks in a team. He's got to be right the way up there. Rangi, of course, gets in your team at 6. 7.
7. Luke Gale. This one I went back and forth on. I'll be honest. Ended up going with Gailey, but Danny Bruff was very close.
Ooh, okay.
I'll be honest, because I remember watching. I remember watching Bruffy as a kid, and just his kicking ability, just absolutely in awe of it. Yeah. Another one that's kind of similar to Rangi had a few tricks in his bag.
A Maverick.
Yes, brilliant word. But I have gone with Luke Gale. I think the consistency that he had, especially during that 2015, especially through 2017, unbelievable. Obviously won his Man of Steel in 2017. 104 appearances for Cass. I think we can all definitely say we remember how great Gailey was. That 2017 season alone would put him in this team for me, because he just led that team from the front, scored huggings of tries as well. His support play went up. It seems like 2016 Luke Dawn went, and 2017 Luke Gale seemed to think, oh, well, Dawn's not there to support anybody anymore. I'll go and get those easy tries. Seemed to gain a yard of pace, and I'm like, where's this come from? But it will be before his hair transplant, so we'll just put that in there as well. We can't use any of those pictures anymore.
No.
Um, but yeah, absolute joke of a player, joke of a bloke. Wound everybody up and loved doing it. But definitely a leader and just, I mean, we'll all remember that semi-final drop goal, won't we?
Yeah,
For
just
years to come.
nerves of steel. But to be honest, I think in terms of nerves of steel, the drop kick was one thing. Look,
The
I know
penalty
he kicked.
goal.
Yeah, I don't get him wrong. I know he kicked him in his sleep, but it's the fact he steps back and then the hooter goes that always
Yeah.
gets me. Maybe watch it back and you forget the hooter sounds as he's lining it up. It's
Yeah.
like, in case you weren't nervous enough, in case it's mean enough, there's your reminder.
Yeah. Is you reminder what's on
Um,
stake? What's at
yeah,
stake here, boy?
but you watch it back and it's never in doubt. It's never in doubt. He was just it had just so the word for me with Gailey is confidence. He was
Oh,
so unbelievably confident that year, and rightly so, as well. There's the try sets up for Greg Minikin, isn't it? Where he kind of like banana kicks it down to the
oh
right
yeah.
edge after making the break, and just everything he touches kind of turned to gold that year. Really, he had the
That
full on
year
Midas
really did.
touch, and but great player overall. You know, and again a great story in the fact he's done it the hard way. He came through
Yeah.
Leeds Academy, London, Bradford. As much as we don't like people seeing people having much success at Leeds, the fact he ended up with a Challenge Cup final win as well, he deserved that really for his career, I think.
Yeah, he did.
Um, it's a shame he's completed the trifecta and gone to Wakefield. Don't get me wrong, and I don't love the fact that he tried to send us down.
He tried, he failed, it's fine.
Yeah, he's fine, but we've got those moments, and I'm sure he keeps casting his heart. So, and I'm sure we'll keep Luke Gale in his heart as well. I'm not going to give my team away. I'm wary. I'm going to give my team away by
Yeah,
saying so.
careful.
So we'll leave it there. But Luke Gale's your scrum half, which brings us to the pack, brings us
Yep.
to the forwards. So we'll start at number 8 and your first prop. Now, this is probably the position where there's probably the most to go at, I would assume, because there's
Yeah.
so many forwards. So this is where we'll probably get the most variation, I would guess.
Yeah, it's a bit of an interesting one at prop. You can kind of go a couple of players that I thought of. Andy Lynch just missed out on the team. You're looking at sort of Nathan Massey, who's been predominantly put out at prop, also 13. He's not made my team either. Got players like Junior Moores who could be put in the front row. But I've kind of gone for two guys in, especially the front row, that I have kind of faves in my heart and kind of I remember watching them being great. So number
Keep
8,
on.
I've got Mitchell Sargent, which I know when I sent you the team, you
Mm.
went, ooh, especially around Mitchell Sargent, went, oh, I forgot about him. But 61 cast appearances played between 2008 and 2010, which is definitely more, I think, than a few people might think he played.
Like myself, yeah.
The memory I have in my head is a crossfield kick to Mike Wainwright. And me and some of my friends, whenever we talk about crossfield kicks, the inevitability of, oh, you remember when Mitchell Sargent did it to Mike Wainwright? I believe it was against Warrington. Don't quote me on that, but I just have this memory of that and just being like, wow, this big, like blonde haired prop forward has just put it on his end of his toe and landed it perfectly in corner. Wow. But he was a big body and he was a great player as well. Not just his kicking ability that I enjoyed. But yeah, I believe he retired after he left Cass at the end of 2010. But yeah, unbelievable player.
Great pick. Great pick. And again, one of those picks. Again, I'm probably just showing my age a little bit, my slightly younger age in the sense that I was there. I watched him. I remember watching those lovely blonde locks. You couldn't miss him, could
Yeah,
you? That kind of almost highlighted hair. It was
yeah,
very. It was white, wasn't it? Really, it
yeah,
wasn't really
pretty much
blonde.
was, wasn't it?
Yeah, but a pretty imposing figure, and yeah, a very good player from what I remember. Again, he's probably not. Again, I'm not gonna give my team away really, but I mean, it's a great pick, and that's the kind of play we want in kind of this series as well. Kind of plays not necessarily right on the tip of your tongue. You go, oh yeah,
Yeah.
Christ, yeah, Mitchell Sargent, why not? And plus, two of my favourite things in rugby league: crossfield kicks and Michael Wainwright.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
if he's gonna complete that triangle, then that's all fine by me. So there, the Sarge goes in at number 8. I like that. Hooker. Well, you've already given away the dilemma. You've
Yes.
got at number 9. So which way have you gone? It is tricky, this one.
It is tricky. Obviously, we've got Darrell Clark and we've got Paul McShane. both of them very just unbelievable players in a cast shirt. One of them obviously has done it for a lot longer than the other, but I have gone for Paul McShane. I've gone for the current number 9.
Yep.
I believe Macca's ability, just not only to be able to do 80 minutes for years, the absolute torment he's put on his body doing 80 minutes for Cass, week in, week out for a number of years. We've sort of seen it almost come to a head this year with his little bit of niggly injury sort of coming in, which is a shame to see. Hopefully he's fighting fit, ready for 2024.
Yeah.
But I believe at the moment he's at 212 Cass appearances.
Is he really?
Yeah, which is unbelievable. Since 2016, obviously, he's been a stalwart of that team. Came in a swap deal for Scott Moore, which I think every fan in rugby league might agree that we got the better end of that deal.
I tweeted that a couple of weeks ago, and there was lots of Wakefield fans replying to me going, "Yeah, but at the time, I was like, yeah, that's not the point, is it?"
At the time,
like,
he scored a try against Bradford and kept them up. Right.
One try, and then I don't even want to go into the rest of the Scott Moore story, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, that was. I think Wakefield fans they've got all the rainbows and the sunshine at the minute, haven't they? I think to them have made something positive of that deal was pretty remarkable. I think it's the ultimate lopsided deal. I think really, regardless of some try he scored a few years later. Getting Macca in for Scott Moore. And I think we've told the story in the podcast before, haven't we? That we were playing Wakefield the week before. Yeah. He got a bit of abuse. He copped a bit going off Paul McShane. And again, it was like Dennis Hormone earlier. The shoulders were going. There was a bit of a smile on his face. I'm like, why is he smiling?
Yeah,
we know. Later down the line.
Exactly. But yeah, Macca's just a great player all around. Leads the team around brilliantly. Great out of dummy half in his day. Yeah, the pace might have gone nowadays, but he's still a very, very intelligent and smart player. And somebody you want in that team. There's no shock that teams were sniffing around him this off-season and rumours were flying that he might be going somewhere else because he's so highly thought of in and around the game. You mentioned earlier with Shenny and people kind of crediting him for how tough he is to play against. Macca's another player that we can put into that category, I believe.
Yeah, they call him a nuisance, don't they? A lot. They call him a pest.
Yeah, on and off the field, he is a pest.
Yeah, I just think that's it. It's just that kind of scrappy 9, but he's got some real guile about him as well, isn't it? As you've said, and like how many times has he kicked 40-20s his own half and the fourth tackle and stuff like that. He's been such an addition to the team. In 7 years, 7 years he's been here, 7-8 years, and he's a player. I don't know whether it's possible. I think there was rumours it was originally put in his contract. Obviously, he's on his testimonial year this year. He's someone you'd want to keep around post-playing career as well, for sure. He's clearly a very good coach. Yeah. Look at what he's done with the Huntlet side.
Exactly.
He's going to be a coach somewhere in Super League going forward. They're probably an assistant to start with, then a head coach. So depending on our coaching situation in a couple of years' time when he does pack it in, I think he's been quite open saying 2025 will probably be it. I mean, if Danny Maggs is still around, for example, kind of works perfectly because they're good pals, aren't they?
Yeah, they're very good pals. But it goes back to that rugby brain that he's got. It's second to none. It's one of just the intelligence, and you can see it on the field. And we've probably had a bit more of a privilege than some people. We've been able to see him in and around training, and he really does G up the boys. He's really in there. He's almost like an extra coach already, no matter what. And has been for years, even when kind of he first came in with Powley. And obviously we had that brains trust of Powley, Ryan Sheridan, Danny Orr. The extra coach there was almost Paul McShane.
That's what you want. And he's a very valid, more than valid addition to the number 9 shirt in this team. I think so. Paul McShane locked in at hooker, which leaves 4 players, and the second prop is first up. So number 10.
Number 10, I've gone Craig Euby. Player
Chubbs,
I remember.
Love it.
I've put Chubbs in there. Obviously now coaching at Halifax alongside Liam Finn, another former cast player. Unfortunately, Finney didn't really come into my mind when I was picking this team. Sorry.
Great player all the same.
Great player all the same. But yeah, not quite. But yeah, Chubbs is straight in there for me. One of the easier picks. 199 cast appearances, which when I was I was like, oh my god, as if he's one short of 200.
It's a shame.
How gutting is that?
Like Massive just got over the line for 300, didn't he? It's a shame they've not. It's a shame Chubbs couldn't at the end. Get him back in.
Chubbs had a
Play.
couple of yeah, well, I think his body shot. His shoulders are absolutely gone, which is awful to hear because he was such a good player, but his shoulders have gone. I believe he had a couple of bad injuries at Cass, which kind of on his day, he was very, very close to an England call up. Can't remember what year, but he was extremely close, and I believe he injured his elbow badly, and it kind of ruined his chances. But he were like literally on the brink of that big call up.
I think he's one of those players now where almost enough time's gone that I think there's other names again. People are kind of our age who do they throw in at that prop position who are going to miss out because Chubbs. I think people forget how good Chubbs was.
Forget how good and forget how long he was at the club.
Yeah, I mean, he had his testimonial at the club, obviously, didn't he? He did 10 years before moving on to Wakefield and Huddersfield.
Huddersfield first, yeah.
10 years came through as a 17, 18-year-old.
Yeah, but being able to do it for that long in a tough team where he'll have had his ups and downs. Obviously, been down relegated a couple of times, and sort of stuck with the club. Yeah. When he probably had other offers as a very talented youngster. I believe when he first went down, he'll have only been 19, 20.
There'll have been opportunities.
There'll have been opportunities, surely, at some other clubs, and stuck with us, stuck with his hometown team for 10 plus years, and really became a legend for me.
Yeah. I definitely think you can throw him in that modern day legend category for sure. Craig Ewby, and nice to hear. Obviously, he does quite a bit of, as you say, he's at Halifax in doing his coaching now, and I know he's coached down at Lock Lane, things like that as well in his spare time, and obviously going up the ranks in terms of coaching now. And you hear him on media quite a lot. Obviously, he does BBC Radio.
Yeah, he talks very well.
Talks very, very well. Loves Cass. You can tell. He does. It's nice to hear a proper Cass fan as well when they're on there. You can tell when they come through, and obviously still lives around the town as well, and still he's had business around the town and stuff. So yeah, we love Chubbs. Absolutely on this.
One story I will tell you. I remember doing a careers day at a local school. I got invited down because my auntie was a teacher, and one of the other people that had been invited down walks in, Craig Ewby. Now, I've had the pleasure of knowing Craig for a number of years. His mum actually lived next door to me auntie. So I've kind of known Craig for a little bit. And he kind of walked in like a little lost puppy, like everybody were basically doing, because we had no idea where to go, where to sit. And seemed to notice me and beeline for me and just came and sat, and we were chatting away. And he always comes and says hello whenever we pass, sort of in the street, in the supermarket sort of thing as well. Just a great bloke.
Nice one. And all I'm hearing from that is that puts you on the same level as Chubbs.
For some reason, I got invited to a careers day. I don't quite know how I wrangled that, but you do favours for family.
They must have been psychic and known about your future podcasting career. I assume that's what it must have been. Back row then, 3 more players to pick. We'll start with number 11.
Yep, another guy that's been at Cass since unfortunately his dad's moved on, but made his debut at Cass as a youngster. Came through the system at Cass. One that I'm sure will be in a lot of teams as well, Oliver Holmes. Oggy. Yeah. Got to have Oggy in there just for his defensive abilities, unbelievable. Another one, in my head, I've got a left edge of Gailey playing that side at 7, Oggy at 11, Shenny at 4, Justin Carney at 5.
He's got some tries.
Oh, it's a dreamy one, isn't it?
Just Dorney filling in.
Dorney filling in, coming in, filtering in there. It's just roll it back, please. Can I have a fantasy world where that exists? But yeah, Oggy defensively, another great player. I believe like him and Shenny really locked down that left edge for a number of years. But he had a sneaky turn of pace, I like to call it.
Yeah, he did.
seemed to every now and then get his nose through a gap and just go. And he created tries. He great player, hitting a line, just some really good times down the lane watching Oggy play. Obviously moved on, went over to Warrington with Powley when he moved on as well, and now obviously at Lee, still doing it. Had a great year last year, sort of bounced back from his maybe disappointing Warrington year. His Lee season, when I've watched him, back to Oggy of old for me. Really solid, really consistent. I think the word consistent is the one that sticks out to me. Even in the
Yeah,
bad
yeah.
games, you knew you were getting at least a 7 out of 10 out of Oggy, regardless of how anybody else played. And more often than not, it were a 9 out of 10, 9 and 10 out of 10 every single week, no matter what. Obviously, battled a couple of injuries like majority of rugby players do.
Yeah.
But yeah, great player.
Yeah, still probably underrated, as you say. I
Yeah,
think
100% he is.
what he provided over those many games for Cass. Yeah, it'd be a sad day when he hangs him up.
It will.
Because I mean, whoever supplies the tape for his head is going to be in a bad situation financially. I would assume he's committed to that for many years, and I think for the purists of the game, I think that brings a little smile. I think as well when you see the old head tape there, and always been superb, and yeah, like one of those players I've just grown up watching. Really, Oggy Holmes, and I completely understand why he'd be in this team. Other position on the back row, then. So you're number 12.
Yeah, I've put him in a position that people might not really realize that he played all that much. It's probably a player that everybody's screaming at me when they've heard me props going, excuse me, where's Milo?
Yeah, yeah.
You've forgotten Grant
Spoiler:
Millett,
he's going to be in my team next week. We do this.
probably the greatest overseas import that we've ever had.
Yeah, all the way up there, isn't he? All
But
the way
yeah,
up.
I've got Grant Millett at 12. Obviously, he did play a number of years
Well,
in the
he
back
came
row.
over he did come over as a second row, didn't he?
He
So
did.
you can
He
have that.
did. And I believe he wore the 11 shirt for at least one season.
Yes, he did.
So we're like, well, he's played there quite a lot.
I
I
think he might
mean,
have worn it for a couple of years,
yeah,
actually.
exactly. So
Yeah.
I've snuck him in at 12. We've stuck him in back row, and it's. But what can you say about Milo? Just unbelievable servant to the club. Definitely has a home in Cass. I mean,
Oh, for sure.
this year he came over for a visit, and everybody were getting giddy that he were putting his boots back on. Everybody thought he were coming back to save us. Everybody thought he were going to do a day for Feta and come back and save us. But no, he's definitely hung him up now. He's officially hung him up. He had a season out
Yeah.
playing Overleen and Oz, and I believe now he has officially decided to retire from rugby league, which is a shame. But yeah, just the unbelievable ability of this bloke. Just
You could throw him in at 6 if you want.
you could throw him in.
Sorry, Rangi. Go
I
at
think you
6.
could put him in any position and he'd stick his hand up and do a job.
Yeah.
Because he's so talented as a bloke. On the rugby field, he's just a huge monster. His ability to ball play as well. He really mixed that ball playing forward and that power forward, like go forward together, which is perfect. Other teams must have been how we kept hold of him for so long. I have no idea.
No, I mean there was rumours knocking around at various points, wasn't there? But never that strong,
Never
really.
that strong.
There was
No.
always whispers about certain teams. It was always kind of the big four as well. It was never anything lower than that, but it was just full commitment. And obviously we honoured whatever he wanted contract
Yeah.
wise, I assume. And but we've talked before about players being on kind of overinflated contracts and stuff like that towards later stages of the career. He's one that it doesn't apply to because he
No.
never dropped his standards.
No, he didn't.
Standards never ever dropped, did they? And that was
No.
absolute testament to him in 10 years, 10 plus years of being a
Yeah.
cast player.
Yeah. Between 2012 and 2021. And you spoke about it'd be a sad day when Oggy Holmes hangs him up. It was a very sad day that day when.
That's a fair bit of tape as well, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Milo had a fair bit as well. When Milo hung him up and left Cass, obviously it was the same day that obviously Powley left and Shenny left, and it felt like the heart of the club had been ripped out a little bit, especially for me.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. Unfortunately, the club times move on, but I'll always remember days watching Milo down at the jungle, just unbelievable. And I mean, his warm up, he always looked knackered, regardless. Uh, First minute or 80th minute, looked knackered. Looked like you were jogging and chugging away, especially towards in the sort of 2020, 2021 seasons. Just looks like you were chugging away, but it's like he
And
never
give him the
stopped.
ball, and then
Yeah.
it's
Like,
like
where's this come from? I thought you were blowing.
burst of energy, isn't it? Yeah, unbelievable player,
Oh,
unbelievable player, Miller. Again, I think he is one of those players that will like transcend lists.
yeah.
When people do this, when we get people on in the '60s, and who remember, the great teams, obviously '86, for example, would probably
Yeah.
provide a few players, and obviously great side to the '90s, and before that, obviously, Miller was one of those
No,
teams who would not be out of place in any single team, regardless of what rule you want to do for your team.
no.
Miller would not look out of place in any, I don't think, and
In many positions as well. Just shows
yeah.
the versatility and that he had. And
I mean, we joke about the fact he played halfback, but he did. And more to the point, it's not the fact that he could fit in at halfback when we needed. We won games when he
yeah,
played at six,
I
which
remember
was amazing, just amazing.
a challenge cup game. I believe it was Grant Millerton and Paul McShane at halfbacks.
What more do you want?
And it's like
What more do you
we
want?
started many games with Grant Millerton at six,
Unbelievable.
and it's
Unbelievable. I know,
didn't
I
happen.
don't know if you can listen to this pod, but I know Aaron Bauer's a huge, huge fan.
Yeah,
Rugby journalist Aaron Bauer regularly references the fact that Grant Millerton played at six, and
yeah.
it was I think he even asked us a few times when we were at games like, Miller playing at six again in hope, just in genuine hope that he's going to watch a good game of rugby if that's happening.
And I think
Uh,
he's one of those players where he'll probably be a favourite of fans of other clubs as well.
yeah,
He's one
yeah.
of those players where everybody could probably say, "Wow, Grant Milton's a great player. I wouldn't mind him at my club."
I think the word is respect, isn't it? I
Yeah.
think that he's maybe of all the players on this list so far, these 12 teams, in terms of players who command the most respect. Don't get me wrong, there's a few on there that command a fair bit. Miller's right up there. I don't think any player commands more respect than Miller.
Yeah.
Really, into the way he carries himself, the way he is as a professional, and obviously his actual quality on the field.
Mm,
Absolutely top draw. One of those players who we want to get on the pod as well at some point
definitely.
and just chat to him. Because
Got
I'd
some
love to hear his
stories.
stories. Love to hear his stories about his time in Cass and obviously what he's getting up to now. So if you're listening, I think his brother listens too, Pat.
Ooh,
So give him a nudge. Give him a nudge. We'll get him on the podcast. I'm sure everyone would love to hear from Grant. So that brings you to number 13. That brings you
yep.
to your final position as we wrap things up. So who plays
Finally.
loose forward in your 13?
Joe Westerman. Currently wearing the number 13 shirt. An absolute legend. Would I use? Can we use legend?
He's close.
He's getting there,
Could
isn't
be.
he?
Could be.
He's getting there.
Could be. It's that longevity thing at Cass, isn't it? Where
That's the
it's
thing.
but the fact he's started his career and likely going to end his
That's the
career.
thing. He's bookended his career at Cass,
Yeah,
and everybody.
he ain't far off. He ain't far.
I'm
I think
sure.
this year he's got the potential to be regarded as a proper Cass legend. Is the best praise I can give him. Really, I think he deserves that.
I think this year, looking at his stats, this year, if he plays most of the season, he will have played more games at Cass than he will have anywhere else.
Right.
Which I think is the only knock on him.
Yeah, that's
On
probably
saying
quite
he's a Cass
important.
legend.
Yeah,
So I believe he's played the most games at Hull FC at the moment.
it's one of those things where by me not immediately heralding him a legend, it's not saying he doesn't deserve it. It's just you kind of want to keep that legend word somewhat sacred, don't you, in
Yeah,
a way? And it's just like you don't want to let too many in, and he's very, very, very close. Don't get me
close.
wrong. As you say, this year I think he can be.
I remember him as coming when he came through. Obviously, his big breakout year was that sort of first year in the championship, or his first year in the championship. Won Young Player of the Year there, then went up to
Yep.
Super League and won Super League Young Player of the Year.
Yep.
Was heralded as sort of the next big thing. I'm sure comparisons to Paul Sculthorpe and
Yeah.
Andy Farrell kind of knocked about
I remember watching
at the
I
time, which is
think England played Wales or England played France or something like that, and he was injured. So he couldn't play, and like they were like panning to him in the crowd because like he was like, "Oh my god, like Westman's not been able to make it." But like how often do you see that? Like they'll put panning to somebody who's just not been able to quite make the squad. It's like that's how excited they
yeah,
were about the prospect of a
yeah,
18, 19-year-old Joe Westman breaking into that England side that had like Sam Burgess playing for it. Like I mean, this is
yeah.
he was just in terms of pure talent coming through as a young kid, you mentioned Darrell Clark earlier. I won't dwell on Darrell Clark. I'm sure we're going to get to him in future episodes, but West is right up there. As a 17-year-old, I've not seen much like it, to be honest.
You talked earlier about Shenny when he left the Saints. He's up there in those conversations of arguably, especially of the 21st century, the best products we've had at Cass.
Yeah.
You look at sort of Shenny, Daz Clark, Joe Westerman as probably the three standouts.
Yeah, I couldn't argue with that too much, unless there's someone I'm really missing. But
I'm trying to wrap my brain, but I don't think. But yeah, Westy made his debut in 2007. Think about how long ago that was, and he's still going. And he's not taking a step backwards at all.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I know we're not saying too much based on last year, but still our best player.
Yeah,
let's be honest, still our best player.
He's won our player of the year for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Say what you want about our teams in the past couple of years. He's still been the standout.
Yeah.
And even after everything that sort of happened at the beginning of this season, and we all know, which could have really knocked his mental state and his focus and kind of what he wanted to do, to be able to put in some of the performances he has done this year is unbelievable.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think we've talked about in a recent episode, haven't we? It's almost. I don't want it. This is not glorifying it or anything like that. Because it was still shouldn't have done it.
Shouldn't have done it.
But it almost makes it more impressive in a way. And again, that's not to denounce what he did. It's not. But it's just the fact that he had that kind of looming over him. The fact that if you Google Joe Westerman now, you're not seeing loads of pictures of him in a cash shirt. I mean, that's just the fact. The fact he still got that and was able to just kind of tunnel vision and just play a massive part in keeping the club up basically this year. And like you say, putting a player performance. I mean, I don't know if it's out yet. I recently went on a Saints podcast where they're previewing or reviewing kind of every team's season. And they got to kind of the player of the year aspect of it and asked me for the player of the year. And they were just like, just without Westerman, because that's obvious. That's genuinely what they said. They want me to pick someone else because Westerman's just clearly the best player. So
obvious.
I mean, as you say, from like opposition view, that's how it's viewed by a Saints fan who's obviously regarded, who's used to top performers. He's got so much respect as a player across the game, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's very well thought of, and I believe his time at Cass has only elevated that back to the standard that he was.
Yeah,
I believe a couple of years he was maybe a little bit. I don't want to say average because he's still been a great player throughout his career. He's maybe taken.
Didn't feel like it just. I don't know if it was a bit like round peg square hole in a few
in certain teams,
in a few positions. Yeah, maybe when at Hull, he was a good performer at Hull. But he was just kind of floating around a little bit at a time. Same at Warrington. At Wakefield, he kind of started get his head back on it and picking himself back up. And obviously, he was very good in his last year at Wakefield. And then, as you say, he's that trajectory's kind of risen in the last 3 years.
Yeah,
to the point where is he at his peak now? You say so. I mean, at his age, you'd be hard pressed for him to kind of improve again next year. But at the same time, if we can keep a team around him on the field, and have actual forwards that can play for 25 games, so he doesn't have to be in the middle.
Yeah.
I mean, again, he's played 6 this year, hasn't he? He's done the Miller role multiple times.
He can unlock defenses with his ball playing ability at the line. He's got a little bit of a kicking game, which is quite interesting every now and then when he pops it out. You're almost a bit shocked. For
better or worse, we have seen a Joe Westerman kick inside the first 10 minutes of a game down the line this year, which, take that for what it's worth, but he's certainly confident enough to do it and does have the ability.
Do you reckon he can still goal kick like he used to at the beginning of his career? He's not done it for a while.
I reckon he'd have a good go.
You mentioned goal kickers earlier on, and I mean, I've got a few that...
You've got Gale, you're fine.
He's got Gale, but I mean, I'm looking at Chubbs and Westy.
I'd like to see a competition.
I remember a touchline conversion from Chubbs to earn a draw against Bradford down at the Jungle. Absolute clutch and just ice in his veins.
Absolutely.
From the touchline. Oh, it was a thing of beauty.
Love it. I love a prop looking kick. It's not There's
Great.
not enough of it in the game. One of my favourite kicks of all time is from a non-cast player. It's the Paul Anderson one for Saints, where again, it's similar kind of thing. Kicks at the touchline. First ever kick, I think. Absolutely nails it.
Just all unbelievable.
Love a big lad kicking a goal like that. I'm sure they could. I'm sure West Ham. Look, we know he's competitive enough to give it a good go, don't we?
Yeah.
So, like, I'm sure he'd have a good crack. But yeah, that brings us to an end. I think that brings our first My 13 episode to an end. Thank you very much, Adam. I don't have to thank you too much because you're always here.
I'm always lingering about like a bad smell.
No, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun. I'll just run through it one more time. So Luke Dawn at fullback, Denny Solomona, Jake Webster, Michael Shenton, and Justin Carney across the back line, Rangy Chase and Luke Gale, the halves. Props are Mitchell Sargent and Craig Hubie, Paul McShane between them at hooker, Ollie Holmes and Grant Millerton at back row, and Joe Westerman at 13. He's a bloody strong team. It is. And yeah, that's Adam's favourite 13. It won't be your favourite 13. That's why we're going to do loads of these episodes. That's why we want to talk about all of these players. I want to hear about players from before my time. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this series. I want to hear about the 86 guys. I want to hear about the night. I want to hear about Hardesty and Epworth. I hear about the H-bombs all the time.
Yeah.
We're going to get you on. We're going to hear about these stories. I can't wait for that. I'm going to do mine next week. My dad's really keen, so he's going to do one.
That'll be a good one. I can't wait for your dad's.
I'm looking forward to my dad's. But we've got a bunch lined up. We're going to have another one with at least one of you guys who regularly speaks to us on Twitter in the next kind of 2-3 weeks as well, which we're looking forward to. I won't give too much away. And yeah, hopefully this is going to be an ongoing series, which will go alongside our regular scheduled programming. It's just a bit lighter, isn't it? Let's be fair. We get into the depth sometimes than the usual episodes, so it's nice to talk about CAS in all its niceness sometimes, and it makes you feel a bit prouder about the club, I think, sometimes, doesn't it, when you're hearing about these brilliant stories and these brilliant players we've had over the years. Thank you very much for listening. You may have watched to a certain degree, not us, but you'll have watched a stream with the audio on it. If you have, that means you're on the COYFCast YouTube channel. For some of you, that might be an easier place to take in the COYFCast than Spotify. Not everyone has Spotify, for example, and various other podcast platforms. So head over there now. Go to YouTube, search COYFCast, subscribe, and you can even put the notification bell on so you'll be able to get a bell every single time an episode goes live. So head over there and you'll never miss a COYFCast episode. And yeah, it might be a little bit easier for some of you to use YouTube. And the more people we can get listening to the pod, the better, obviously, for our point of view. Adam, thank you very much once again.
Been a pleasure. Thank you for having me, and thank you for using me as a guinea pig.
You're more than welcome, mate. More than welcome. We'll see you next time. COYF.